Alright, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all the honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushua, by Hashem, Rachakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered abroad. Alright, this is the brother Bible Saul, here with a lesson. The Lord wanted us edifying. So, this lesson will be entitled, something along the lines of, what will happen, when the true Israelites, are back in the land. Because, of course, we know that we have the, the Edomite small hats, who dwell in that land today, who, are also the Amalekites, which is, a tribe, the head tribe of Esau, and, currently. All right, and those are who dwell in the land. All right, well, a portion of the land. All right. However, even though that they claim themselves to be the, the true Israelites, right? It all goes against, biblical prophecy of who they would be, today. All right, and it also goes against how the Lord would get the Israelites, back to that land, through him. All right. So we're just gonna, get into a few scriptures, and Lord wanted us edifying. So this is the book of Ezekiel 36:5. Therefore saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea. All right, going into residue of the heathen. The main people who dwell in that land are Edomites and Ishmael. All right, but when it says against all Idumea, that's talking about Edomites. Okay, which the small hats are Edomites. Okay, which have appointed my land into their possession. So this is a prophecy going into the heathens have our land, and are dwelling in our land, starting with Esau. Okay, so the Israelites, at this point in time, are not in the land. All right, when the Israelites will be brought back to the land, it's not going to be by the nations that, all right, the Edomites. No, the Lord is coming to take the Israelites, the true Israelites, back to the land. All right, and continue, it says, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with the spiteful minds to cast it out for a prey. See? So it's actually prophesied that, before the Lord's return, all right, we will have the heathens dwelling in our land. Okay? Which we know that the true Israelites are prophesied to be, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. All right, and you also have, your speckled birds throughout the four corners of the earth, whose line goes back to Jacob. All right, so this is the book of Baruch 2:29. It says, "If ye will hear my voice, surely this very great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations, where I will scatter them." So the Israelites are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, that's a part of the curse that the Lord has put on the Israelites, for disobeying, the commandments. All right. Verse 30, it says, "For I knew that they will not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves." And that's what you can see today. All right. In the land of our captivities, we're waking up to the fact that we're the true Israelites. All right. You got brothers, all across the world, going out and preaching, putting their bodies as a living sacrifice, preaching the downfall of this kingdom. Okay. And this is what was prophesied to happen. All right. You don't see the small heads doing that, and they completely go off. Okay. And they don't even believe in, the Messiah. Okay. So that's how you know that it can't be the people. All right. We fit biblical prophecy. We fit that description. We fit those, the curses, All right, we fit those people. All right, we're supposed to be the lowest of the low. You know, the Amalek. You know, they're at the highest. All right, you know, the ruling class. You know, I got disturbed while making a lesson, but just going back into it, Baruch 2:30, and it says, "For I knew they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves." All right, and that's currently what's happening. Israelites and all four, you know, in you know, throughout the whole world, you know, throughout the whole earth, right, is waking up to who they are. All right, you know, prophets throughout the whole world, you know, waking the people up, you know, and you don't see no other people doing that besides, you know, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right. So just going back, let's read 31. It says, "And shall know that I am the Lord their power, for I will give them a heart and ears to hear. And they shall praise me in the land of their captivity and think upon my name." You see? So in the land of our captivities, you know, we're going to praise the Lord and think upon his name, which the Lord's name is Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai, Yahweh being the Most High. All right, and Yahushai being who they ignorantly call Jesus Christ. Okay. Verse 33, "And return from their stiff neck and their wicked deeds, for they shall remember the way of their fathers which sinned before the Lord." It says, "And I will bring them again into the land I promised with an oath unto their fathers." All right, so the Lord, all right, starting with, of course, Yahushua, you know, coming back, you know, the Lord is going to put us in that land. All right, not no, you know, British Edomites, you know, not different Edomite nations. All right, you know, we wouldn't be brought over there and then, you know, have a covenant with Babylon, and no, that's not prophetical. Okay, so let's read that again. Verse 34, "And I will bring them again into the land which I promised with an oath unto their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." You see? So the Lord is dealing with one specific line, one specific bloodline. All right? And they shall be lords of it. So, yeah, we're going to be lords. Okay? You know, we're going to be on top. All right? And, you know, the other nations will have to be put into captivity. All right, and build up that righteous kingdom. It says, "And I will increase them, and they shall not be diminished. And I will make an everlasting covenant with them to be their power." Right? And this is going into the new covenant. The new covenant will fully be established once we get back into that land. Because once we get back into that land, you know, that's when the kingdom of heaven, you know, will finally be established. All right, and it says, "And they shall be my people, and I will no more drive my people of Israel out of the land that I have given them." So it's going to be an eternal rulership. All right, you know, everlasting rulership going on forever. So this is Jeremiah, or Salakia. This is Isaiah 2:4. It says, "And he shall judge among the nations and rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks." All right, so this is going into the kingdom. All right, once we're back in our land, all right, you know, these other nations will be in slavery. All right, they're beat their swords into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks. All right. This is going into from tools of war to tools to you know, to be servants, right? You know, to work, you know. So this is Isaiah 2:4, and we'll just continue. It says, "Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." You see, and what's going on in that land? All right, they still are having wars. You know, tensions is high. All right, everything going on from Israel and Iran and, Pakistan, these different things, these are wars that's going on. All right. Different missiles being launched, in these different areas and such, going back and forth, When we're back in that land, when we are in the kingdom, all right, we're not going to have to worry about war. Okay. Everything is going to be perfect. Everything will be in its proper place. All right. And also, we will be perfect. So it's no need for any war to happen. There's no need for the Lord to turn his back on us. All right, because once that kingdom is established, the new covenant, all right, is fully established. All right, the law will be written in our inward parts, and that's something else that will have to happen. All right, and that's how that those ain't the people, because they don't follow the commandments of the Lord. All right, and you got an area in Israel called Pink City. The Lord ain't dealing with that. All right. So we for damn sure know that those ain't the people. Jeremiah 31:33, it says, "But this shall be my covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their power, and they shall be my people." All right. So in the kingdom, the Israelites will be perfect, starting with the elect, because the elect, are going to get their bodies changed. Once they receive salvation, get into the chariots, they're going to be changed in that twinkling of an eye, and have those perfect bodies, man. All right. So that's how you know that, because all this has yet to happen. All right, and everything that we're seeing that's going on is completely setting up the true Israelites to come in and be in power, right? And we can see that through the prophecies, seeing the different events going on throughout the world, going into the news. All right, we can see that the Lord is soon to make his return, and he's showing the signs that he's coming, making that return. Okay, but that's pretty much the lesson. Lord, when it was edifying. So with that, I'd like to give all the honor and praise and glory to Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shai by Hashem, Kadosh. So